Hello everybody, Lisa here with a new video for you. Today this video is part of a super fun video hop showcasing the fabulous new Merakishimmer release from Crafty Meraki. All the details for the hop are in the description box below, so make sure you hop along to see all the inspiration from the designers. This release is beautiful, hot foil plates and layering stencils, and I'm using both on my card today, so let's get started. Okay, so here is the card that I created a few days ago in preparation for the video. I'm going to be recreating this card for you, but just one small change. The card in front of you on screen is made with champagne foil, and today's I'm going to make with matte gold foil. So here is the new hot foiling plate called Love Forever. It's absolutely gorgeous. And you can also get the Love Forever Meraki motifs, which are layering stencils that coordinate with that hot foil plate. I'm also going to be using the Handmade Love Merakishimmer plate and the coordinating Meraki Paradise. So I'm going to start off by doing my foiling. And I'm going to start with the sentiment. So I set up my foiling machine, the green light is on so it's ready to foil, and I've prepared my foiling stack. So I'm using some Glimmer specialty cardstock for my sentiments. I've placed some matte gold foil down on that, pretty side up, and I've placed the hot foil plate face down on top of the foil, and I've taped that all together so it all stays in place, and I'm going to place that down on the foiling platform. And once that's all in place, I'm going to press the timer button and let that start heating the foil up. So I'm just going to put my plates down on top, and once the timer button stops flashing, I have cut some of the footage out so you're not having to wait around. I will then be able to remove the whole platform from the docking station and run that through the die cutting machine. So just removing it from the base here and taking it to the die cutting machine off camera, and I'm going to bring it back and see how it's looking. So just removing the plates, and I'm going to pop the platform back into the machine so it can start heating up. And now it's time to take a look at our foiling. So I'm just removing the yellow tape here. The plate is really hot. It doesn't worry my fingers too much, but please be careful. It does get very, very hot. So I do use something to help me there. Now I'm just going to pull back the foil, and we're going to see how gorgeous those sentiments look. So I'm just positioning the coordinating paradise down over the top of the sentiments. I'm going to tape that down. I'm just making sure it's all evenly spaced around the edge here, and run that through my die cutting machine. It's such a huge time saver to have one die that cuts everything out in one go. I can pop all those out, pop them into a little bag and keep them with the sentiment set, and then I know I've got loads to use on future projects. Continuing on with the foiling now, I'm now going to foil the Love Forever plate. So this time I'm using some Nina Solar White 110 pound. I've put my matte foil down on top, pretty side up, the plate down on top, and I've taped it all together. So I'm just laying that down on the hot foil machine now, press the timer button, wait for it to stop flashing, and then I can remove that and run it through the die cutting machine. Because I know that I'm going to be ink blending this panel, I've chosen to use Nina 110 pound. I wouldn't always use this cardstock. I did give this a test run to make sure that it worked okay, and it really does depend on your plate, how hot the machine is, what your success rate will be, but it did work out okay. I did put an extra paper shim in my sandwich when I ran it through my die cutting machine. I actually didn't need that, and I do get a little bit of over foiling, which I'll show you how to remove. But just taking the plate off now with the magnetic tool, and I'm going to pull back that foil, and you can see how absolutely gorgeous that image is, and it's actually foiled really well. I'm taking a dry makeup brush here, and I'm just going to run that all over the image to take off any excess foil. And then I take a closer look at the panel, and I'm going to use the sand eraser just to move any other bits that I can see, but I make sure to use it lightly. I don't want to scratch the cardstock or ruin the foiling. We're going to move on to the stenciling now, and I'm taking one of the Misty sticky mats and just removing the protective acetate on top, and I'm going to place my panel now and down onto that now, and that's just going to hold that in place whilst I do the stenciling. The mats are a great item to have in your stash. They really do hold the cardstock well. So moving on now and removing the layering stencils from their packaging. There are 5 in the set. I'm going to use all 5 on my card today to create all of those lovely layers. You could get away with skipping a few layers, but I didn't want to. So we're going to start off by taking the first stencil, and they are all numbered, and there are grid lines on them as well if you're using an A2 panel. My panel is slightly bigger, so I don't need to use the grid lines. I just need to move the stencil around until it's all lined up correctly, and then I'm going to tape that down ready to do the inking. I'm using Distress inks for all of my ink blending today, and for the 2 big flowers I've got 3 colours. I've got saltwater taffy, dried marigold and abandoned coral, and I am going to use blending brushes to apply the colours, and I'm going to use all 3 colours on each of the flowers. So going in first with the dried marigold here, and I will go over that a little bit just to add a bit more saturation to that colour. Clean off the brush, and now I'm going in with saltwater taffy. These colours blend really well together, so you're not going to get any odd colours if you use them. Again, I'm adding a little bit of extra colour where I think I need it. Cleaning off the brush again, and now I'm going to go in with the abandoned coral. Trying not to lay too much colour down, as this is the first layer, and I'm going to be adding colour on top of this with the other layers. So cleaning the brush off and removing the tape, and we're now going to position our second stencil down. All of the stencils are pretty easy to line up. I did find with the second stencil that it was easier to line it up with the flowers around the outside. So just putting that in place, taping it down, and we're now going to add our second layer of colour. I'm starting off by adding some more dried marigold over the areas where I had that colour before, so you don't have to be super precise about that. All the colours do blend together, so they do all look fine in the end, even if you put them, you know, one colour slightly overlaps another. For the outer flowers, I'm using Tattered Rose, and they do have a second layer as well, which comes in the third stencil. But just finishing off the second stencil here, going in with saltwater taffy over the same approximate areas as before, and then finishing off with abandoned coral. I don't know about you, but I love using layering stencils. At the moment it looks a little bit of a hot mess, but I really love seeing how an image comes to life as you put the different layers down. So moving on to the third stencil now, this is going to be the final layer of colour on all of the flowers. And just making sure I've got it lined up correctly. I'm using those flowers around the edge again to help me do that, and I just tape that down, and I just go through the same process with the 3 colours on the main flowers and an extra layer of tattered rose on the outer flowers. I find it quite therapeutic doing stencil layering. You can actually produce cards pretty quickly this way. I'm sure if you've already got stencils you'll agree with that, and it probably only took me about 10 minutes or so to colour this stencil up with all the different layers, so it really doesn't take long at all. And the beauty of layering stencils with foiled images is that the foil resists the ink. So adding layers of ink over the top of the foil doesn't dull the foil at all. It resists it. It still looks as bright as it does at the start. So we're going to move on now to our leaves. There's 2 layers for the leaves. I'm using cracked pistachio for my first layer and evergreen bough for my second. I've sped up the rest of the footage for the ink blending of the final 2 layers, as the process is exactly the same. I've changed brush and I'm going to move on and add that first layer of cracked pistachio. This is a combination that I don't think I've used before. Cracked pistachio and evergreen bough look really pretty together, and I'm definitely going to use this as a combination again. So just lining up that final stencil and then adding on that deeper colour just to finish the colouring off. I'm going to take the last stencil off now, put everything away and check and see how it's all looking, and it looks absolutely gorgeous. I'm going to tilt that into the light so you can see how pretty that foiling looks. This is going to be an A2 card, so I'm going to trim the panel down a bit, and I'm just taking this template that I created here. I've just cut an A2 window in a piece of cardstock and I place it down over my image to see where I want to cut or where I want to place my die. I sometimes just find it easier to visualize if I block out some of the other areas. So I'm just taping my die down now and I'm going to run that through the die cutting machine. Off camera, I die cut a white panel using the Crafty Plaid A2 cover plate die, and I've added some adhesive onto the back of that, and I've adhered that onto a top folding £110 Nina Solar white card base. So I've also fussy cut out around the flower. You can get a coordinating die. I didn't have that, so I fussy cut it out, and I've just put some foam tape onto the back and I'm going to position that down over my panel. I really like the added texture that you get from the die cut panel behind the flower. And I've just taken one of the sentiments that I die cut earlier here, added some foam tape onto the back, and I'm just going to position that down over my panel and press that down. Lots of great sentiments to choose from in that set. I went with the With Love sentiment because you can use that card for so many different occasions. And of course I had to add a final little bit of sparkle. I'm using the Enchanted Forest Meraki sparkle gems. They're really pretty gold jewels, so just adding those around the sentiment and the flower. That brings us to the end of the video. I hope that you've enjoyed seeing this come together and that you love the new products as much as I do. So make sure to check out all the information about the hop in the description below. I'll also have links to the supplies and a coordinating blog post. Thank you so much for watching.